Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, we get an update on Navy personnel and retention efforts. With a high operations tempo and the changing needs of younger sailors, leaders look to new methods to keep good talent in the sea service. Also, we get the latest in financial news from around the defense industry. Find out who made moves in the market recently. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. When it comes to personnel policies and retention, the Navy has a set of unique challenges. Long deployments at sea, high operations tempo, and frequent base changes all play a factor. For an update on how the Sea Service is working to keep sailors in uniform, Defense News Weekly spoke to Rear Admiral Jennifer Couture, Director of Military Personnel Plans and Policy for the Navy. Here's some of that conversation.
Admiral Couture, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks for inviting me to talk with you.
So some of the newest news out of your sector of the Navy is we've got some changes to promotion rules that are going to affect a lot of enlisted sailors. Could you talk me through what's changing and what that will look like?
Yeah, this is a really exciting opportunity. And it came about actually through some adverse things. And so when I say that, you'll recall in the last couple years, we had significant gaps at sea. We had significant recruiting shortfalls. And we thought, oh my gosh, what do we do? What is the data telling us? So certainly as Navy Recruiting Command has done really heroic things to get us back on track, it really gave us a unique opportunity to rethink the way we do business, to really think deliberately about challenging the status quo and saying, are the policies, are the processes that we're doing, are they serving us today and in the future? So part of that was we looked at inventory and we said we have this many Master Chiefs in the Navy, but they're not in the places where we need them to be. Where they're not at sea or they're not at shore facilities that we need. So what is happening here, for example? And so through this really process of having a questioning attitude, looking at the data, we said we need to redesign the way that we select people for promotion and get people into the billets that we need them to be into. And so we created a senior enlisted marketplace. And the senior enlisted marketplace basically lists jobs that are available for fill and lets people who are eligible pick those jobs, which is really a spectacular opportunity. And so first of all, it said in a transparent way, here's where we need you to go. And then sailors could look at that and say, okay, yeah, that works for me. I have some choice. I have some agency. Part of our questioning attitude, also, we looked at retention. So first we had recruiting, and now we had retention. So we looked at exit survey data. And exit survey data told us that sailors wanted more choice in their assignments. We said, this is great. We want you to have choice. We want to give you a list of jobs, and you can pick from them. So we piloted the senior enlisted marketplace model for Master Chiefs. The results were great. So after 3 years of doing this, we went from an historic fill rate of 40%. So that means that in the fleet, Master Chiefs and Master Chief jobs, historically 40%. Now we are up at 92%.
My goodness, in 3 years.
In 3 years. Retention is up, including for this cohort of people. They're re-enlisting at a higher rate. They're happier that they actually got a choice. And so we decided, okay, well, based on what we've seen for Master Chiefs, let's do this for Senior Chiefs. This fall, after we selected chiefs, we went through chief selection process just the same way we always have.
And when you're
yeah.
talking about chiefs, you're talking about that E7 level.
That's right.
Master chiefs and senior chiefs above that. So you're making your way down in the enlisted ranks.
That's right.
To more junior sailors.
That's exactly right. And it was primarily because the E9s were a smaller group of people. So we tested it with a smaller group of people and then rolled it down as we continued to improve the process through each step. And so what you see today is really a historic shift in the way we advertise jobs, the way we let sailors have more agency and choice. We have transparency, we have agility through this process, which we've never done before.
So you've been in this job for about a year and a half. And as you said, you've done this exit survey. You've got this great wealth of information. What else is that information telling you?
Yeah.
And where else are you going in terms of retaining, recruiting, but also making life better for sailors?
Thanks so much. I really love talking about this. So as I mentioned, about a year ago, we said, what is the data telling us? So we looked at the exit survey data. So we asked sailors to take a lot of surveys, and we actually do read them. So we're looking at the exit survey data, and we said, okay, what is the number one reason why sailors want to get out of the Navy? And the number one reason sailors said was op tempo. Now, we know, just a cursory review of the news, you know that the Navy is everywhere all the time. They're always forward deployed. We always have aircraft carrier strike groups. We always have amphibious readiness groups. Everyone is out and about. So we said, okay, well, we don't really have control over op tempo per se, for example.
And when you're talking about op tempo, operational tempo, how much time they're spending deployed versus at home?
That's right. When the president says he needs to move a carrier strike group somewhere, we do that, right? And so we said, how do we mitigate the impact of long deployments on people's quality of service? What can we do here? So we took a look at sea-shore flow. How long is your sea tour versus how long is your shore tour? And what are the flow points through your career trajectory? And we realized that probably 3/4 of our rates are sea intensive, which means that their first and second sea tours are probably 50 to 60 months. That's a long time to give the Navy the intensity that is demanding of a sea job. And so we're like, well, no kidding why people are burnt out. And so we started really in earnest looking at opportunities to change that. And so coming up, there will be changes to the seashore flow opportunity, which has the full support of CNO, who said, his number one C note said sailors first. And we're really looking at mitigating the pressures on sailors and their families from constantly being at sea. So that was the first thing.
Can you give an idea of what those changes might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at specifically second sea tours to see how we can reduce the length of second sea tours from 60 or 50 months to something that looks more like 36 to 48. So that, as you're thinking about making that critical decision, do I stay in the Navy at the end of my minimum service obligation, or do I leave the Navy, that this is not the determining factor for you. So that was the number one thing. The other contributing factors that were in the top 10 included impact on my family based on a lack of predictability and a lack of geographic stability. And so again, we looked at senior enlisted marketplace and bullet-based advancement as opportunities for sailors to really look at what are the available options, and how can I make good choices with my family to meet my our needs. So giving sailors more agency and more choice.
When we come back, more from our conversation with a top military official on Navy personnel policies and retention. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. As the Navy looks to retain sailors in uniform, it's considering changes to keep the sea service attractive to a new generation. Among the potential changes, updates to required tours at sea and changes to sailors' sea bags. Here's the Navy's Director of Military Personnel Plans and Policy with more.
as you look at all this data, and sure enough, a lot of ink has been spilled on this, a lot of talk has gone into this, but what kind of generational differences do you see? Obviously, we're looking at Gen Z.
Mhm.
That's absolutely the recruitable population. What's different about this generation than the ones that you and I were a part of?
Yeah, it's 100% quality of service. That is the number one fact. You can bin all of the things that we've talked about in quality of service. And so it really goes into why. So we're in a competitive environment. We are competing for talent. And so why would a young person decide to join the Navy? In a generation past, or maybe even my parents or my grandparents, they said, this is a steady job with good money and pension and health care. You know, this is good for you. And today's generation, which I hate to say that like I'm a really old person, but today the expectations for quality of your life is that you have better work-life balance. I've had lots of young people say to me, I don't want to spend the next 20 years of my life only at sea and not participating in my family. They have expectations for living in barracks. So CNO announced that, no sailor lives afloat. When I first joined the Navy, E4 and below lived on ships. That's just the way it was. Everything you owned fit in a sea bag, or it was contained in your locker on the ship. And we recognize that that's just not good enough anymore, that the quality of life expectations are higher, and we owe our sailors that. And so I think, as CNO especially puts sailors first and saying, this is important to recruiting and retaining people on delivering on these higher quality of service expectations, we will continue to be on that pathway moving forward. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's exactly the right thing to do. As a reward for the top talented people that we are bringing in here, that are making this a choice when they have lots and lots of other choices. There are lots of employers out there that give people tuition assistance, that give them healthcare insurance, that give them, opportunity for advancement and education. And so as we say to people, here's an organization you should be a part of, we need to make sure that we are also signaling that not only do we have high purpose, which we have in spades, we have a mission that, as we celebrate the 250th year of the Navy, a mission that continues to guarantee the prosperity of the United States. But also, we're investing in you as a future leader of the organization. So we're going to, join the Navy, see the world, have adventure, get an education, right? So things that our parents did are still true today. And we need to make sure we're delivering on that.
Now, in a previous conversation we had, you also mentioned looking at the sailor's sea bag. That is the set of clothes that they're issued at boot camp that they take with them, and some changes that might be coming. Could you talk through those?
Absolutely. Uniforms are always a hot topic. So the SECNAV has directed we review the sea bag and streamline the sea bag. First of all, it just makes sense, to not burden sailors with maintaining all these different uniforms. So second of all, it's expensive. So we want uniforms that are functional, that fit well, that are durable, that sailors feel proud to wear, and rules that make sense. So we're looking at those. So for example, we have 2 PT uniforms. Why? One, we've already made a decision. We're going to phase out the gold, the blue and gold older uniform. That's already out there. And so by 2027, it'll be 1 PT uniform. That makes sense. And it is also higher quality. It is more in line with what, if you were to go to a running store out in town, it's more in line with the kinds of clothing that you would find there as well. So that's good. Another thing is boots. So we have lots and lots of different kinds of boots. If you see 10 sailors in a room, there might be, 8 different pairs of boots on people. And so we've said, why are we doing this? Does this really make sense? Does this meet the requirement for their working conditions? What are we doing this for? And so again, streamlining, the sea bag. We are looking at some of our dress uniforms, do we have too many dress uniforms, and making that less burdensome on people. So we've also instigated the Navy Uniform Board. So the Navy Uniform Board consists of the Fleet and Force Master Chiefs as the direct representation of their enlisted sailors. So sailors should give their Fleet and Force Master Chiefs their input on uniforms because they're their representation. We have been having that board meet about once a month because we have some really important things that we want to take care of with speed. But so they should feel free to do that, whatever things aren't working. We're also working on fit, and especially for women. We've recognized for some time that the model of fit was not right, that it was out of date. And some of that, when I was a midshipman in the ROTC program, we were still wearing uniforms that the waves had worn, right? And so recognizing that, keeping in pace with modern women and the need. So this is a funny example. In the women's service dress blue pants, my pocket is big enough for my identification card. That's it. And so I engaged with some junior sailors and they say, we don't understand this pocket situation. And I said, they're like, where are you supposed to put your stuff? I said, in your purse. And they're like, my purse, which, was something that, seemed intuitive to my grandmother, right? And so we owe our sailors, all of our sailors, better functionality, form, and fit for the uniforms.
So when should we expect to see some decisions on those CBAG issues?
I would think in the next couple months, we will see decisions as they work through the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy and the CNO as the board presents their recommendations and their findings and the data that goes with that. What are the costs associated with making these changes? We'll be making those changes.
Admiral Couture, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
When we come back, our financial expert returns with her latest tips. Don't go away. Welcome back. If you're a young recruit just starting your savings journey, you might not know where to begin. On this edition of Money Minute, Jeanette Mack from Navy Federal Credit Union returns with tips on how to kickstart your finances.
Let's be real. Starting out in your career with an entry-level paycheck can make saving money feel impossible. But here's the good news. You don't need a huge salary to kickstart your financial future. All it takes is a little creative thinking and a solid game plan. One of the best ways to pad your wallet, try a side hustle. From tutoring online to pet sitting to cashing in on hobbies like cooking or photography, there are tons of ways to earn extra money without a big investment. And bonus, you could pick up some skills along the way. But remember, it's all about balance. Don't burn out chasing every dollar. The goal is to increase your income, not overload your schedule. Pick 1 or 2 gigs so you can earn extra cash without losing your sanity. Consistency is key. Those small earnings add up fast, and when the money starts rolling in, make a plan for it. Stashing away a little each week can really grow over time. Check out your savings options, split your direct deposit if you can, and if you're feeling ambitious, throw a bit toward retirement. Trust me, these simple moves now can pay off big as your career and your savings account grow.
To get more coverage of military and defense topics, pilot your information gathering vessel towards militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to be the smartest sailor on the flat top, sign up for our early bird brief compiled each morning to bring you the most recent news. Finally, if social media is where you collect open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. And for you junior troops, we're on TikTok, so go follow us there as well. When we return, the latest financial news from around the defense industry. Stay with us. Welcome back. Who made waves in the defense markets in recent days? Defense Dollars is back with the latest and updates on new tech, contracts, and military systems purchases. Have a look.
Welcome to Defense Dollars, your update on the defense and aerospace markets around the world and what is making the numbers move. Let's dive in. India has approved a proposal to purchase 114 Rafale multi-role fighter jets from France in its largest ever military procurement, aimed at addressing a serious shortfall in the Indian Air Force. The decision, cleared by the Defense Acquisition Council ahead of the visit by the French president, comes amid heightened tensions with Pakistan and China and is expected to strengthen strategic ties between New Delhi and Paris. The deal is part of a broader $40 billion military modernization plan and was chosen over competing offers from the U.S. as well as Russia. Analysts say the selection reflects India's push for strategic autonomy as well as defense diversification. With only about 30 active squadrons against a sanctioned 42, the Air Force hopes the new jets will boost air dominance, long-range strike capabilities, and overall deterrence. The Rafales have already been deployed in combat during a recent 4-day conflict with Pakistan, where officials credited them with enhancing precision and standoff strike capabilities. Most of the 114 aircraft are expected to be manufactured in India under the Make in India initiative, including technology transfer and local integration, further deepening defense cooperation between India and France. Lockheed Martin has unveiled its Lamprey multi-mission autonomous undersea vehicle, an unmanned underwater system capable of attaching to ships, launching torpedoes, and deploying airborne drones. The vehicle features a 24-foot payload bay that can be configured for a variety of missions from the seabed to the surface. The Lamprey can loiter on the ocean floor with a low stealth profile, collect intelligence, and recharge by docking with a host ship. Underwater, it can fire anti-submarine torpedoes and deploy decoys. And up at the surface, it can launch unmanned aerial vehicles for reconnaissance or kinetic strikes, enabling anti-ship warfare operations both above and below the waterline. Company officials said the system was internally funded, allowing rapid deployment, and described it as a true multi-mission weapon capable of detecting, disrupting, and engaging targets autonomously. It can also operate in swarms, communicate with other unmanned systems, as well as deploy advanced surveillance technology during missions. And one more before you go. Fortum Technologies has received a multi-million-dollar order to protect U.S. venues during the 2026 FIFA World Cup using its net-equipped drone hunter interceptors. They safely capture and remove hostile drones without creating debris or endangering crowds. The 2026 tournament will be the largest in history, with 48 teams competing across 16 host cities in the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, and more than 1 million global visitors expected. This marks Fortum's second consecutive World Cup deployment after its role in Qatar in 2022, where it was the only kinetic mitigation solution selected among counter-drone technologies. Company leaders said the growing threat from small drones, now seen as tools for surveillance, disruption, or attack, require solutions that can neutralize airborne risks without causing collateral damage in crowded stadium environments. The order includes TrueView R30 radar units for detection and tracking, SkyDome command and control software for autonomous response, and Drone Hunter Hexcopter interceptors designed for rapid deployment across host cities. The purchase is part of a broader Department of Homeland Security investment in counter-drone capabilities ahead of the World Cup and events marking the nation's 250th anniversary. And that'll wrap up your defense dollars for this week. Join us on Cheddar.com and DefenseNews.com for more stories like those.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.